Everybody, welcome to MEJABULAT Sidang Suara Seni Session 3. Building platforms, inviting ideas for spaces, places, projects, transmissions. Our moderators for this session are Nohanim Khairuddin, curator, writer and artist based in Perak, welcome back, and Yap Sabin, who is an artist and teaches at the Faculty of Creative Multimedia at Multimedia University. Thank you very much.
Welcome back to session ketiga. Thank you very much all of you who really I think stayed until the end today. Tak ada kerja lain. Okay. So semua orang ada kan this paper. So I will not read everything, but just to emphasize on certain aspects lah. Jadi sesi ketiga ini kita mengajak para peserta untuk pergi lebih jauh sedikit ya. Kalau tadi dalam session 1 dan 2 kita banyak mendengar rintihan, keluhan dan macam-macam hal lagi daripada komuniti artis, dan hopefully is good as a reminder. Benda ni dah lebih, some of them dah diulang-ulang ya, kalau untuk setiap di apa ni talk ataupun diskusi, tetapi it's a good reminder for all of us. Nevertheless, untuk session ketiga ini kita mahu sesuatu yang melangkaui daripada isu-isu asasi ya, yang penting serta apa ni, melangkaui isu-isu tentang duit dia lah, kekangan ekonomi dan infrastruktur dan sebagainya. Jadi anda boleh lihat ada 5 soalan yang telah disediakan. Mungkin kita boleh satu persatu respon kepada soalan-soalan tersebut.
Alright, just very fast, quickly recap. I think we actually recognize that all the practitioner, artists, and then the educator, scholar, researcher, institution representatives here actually have very different background. And we are here not just to hear each other's, but also hear out. Ya, bukan harap didengar, tapi also mendengarkan suara yang yang lain juga. Because all these differences eventually tells us about the kind of expectation, the way we value and we understand art, and how we have gone through different experiences in that sense. So although we have a systemic issue that we need to address, and I think I will just very briefly point out that Sunita is actually planning for a symposium or a forum soon taking place in January. Maybe Sunita will talk about it later on in a different, but it's actually to deal with the issue of accountability, transparency and policy, and how do we really go to or know how or where to lobby, to work on things like that. So I think she would have a better description later on. But for this session, I think we want to sort of like change the energy and the direction because of all the different grievances dealing with lack of the past and things like that. But how do we create a different alternative or different kind of imagination based on what we already have and based on the kind of background that we have, right? So I just want to point out like the kind of different approach, whether with Bangkok, Borneo, Pangosula, Lost Generation Art Space, Kappa Laureate in Sri Skanda, and then in Penang, there are all this different micro energy going on. But I would like to also we would like to also invite like all our artist friends and then curators, practitioners, and to think about is that beyond this way, with or without money, or money is never enough, right? But let's imagine you have enough of resource. How else can you be resourceful in pushing the artistic production, in pushing the artistic imagination, and in pushing the artistic discourse vis-a-vis the society, vis-a-vis institution, culture and politics, and not just within spatial way of looking at one city to city, city to the countryside, but also in temporal sense with history. We deal about cultural heritage that has been practiced for a certain generation from the past or whatever, but also extending it and expanding that. So I'm personally interested in this kind of thinking because that might give us certain currency to deal with not just the past as something that we can talk about as artistic work in present, but how can we think of, or what kind of vision do we have? Because this would provide a roadmap, hopefully, a roadmap not just for educators, for policymakers, or for those who are in institutions to look at what kind of possible roadmap can be built on, okay, for micro or macro way of thinking, such that we can engage in a larger conversation. Notice that the one point that's very important in the last session is talking about national, regional, global engagement. So if our conversation is important in terms of systemic issue within the nation, within the country, but we are also talking about how do we push our artistic work and the discourse to be able to engage in global and historical manner. And I think that is very important. So I want to invite those who are here today, if you have something as you felt that have not been discussed in terms of structural issue, but structure in terms of knowledge, structure in terms of epistemology, okay, information, in terms of structure in terms of how different way of managing, working with communities. Those are very interesting ideas. And just to point out, for example, Hinbas Art Depot, or Hinbas Depot Art, sorry, Art Depot, Art Depot, Sasaran, okay, for example, these are all models that has been researched and talked about by researchers coming from abroad. So very often, they actually cross they go across from one point to the other without going through the filter of the national institution and whatever. And those are all happening. So that kind of global horizontal exchange is actually happening, and sometimes we do not notice that. And this is interesting in the sense that knowledge about the artistic and cultural work is actually being transmitted very fast. Okay, it's turning into my session.
Lecturer lah katakan ya. Okay, we don't want to take more time. Kita terus lah kepada soalan pertama, pengkaryaan ya. Apakah yang kita faham mengenai proses pengkaryaan hari ini dan bagaimanakah proses ini dapat digunakan untuk tujuan pembelajaran, eksperimentasi dan pemindahan ilmu dalam lingkungan sesebuah bidang dan di antara pelbagai bidang. Okay. In English, how do we understand art making processes today, and how can this be used for learning, experimentation, and the transfer of knowledge within and between disciplines? Okay. Okay.
Assalamualaikum. Selamat datang. Okay. Jatuh kan? Saya ingin berkongsi sedikit berkaitan dengan soalan nombor 1 ni. Beberapa cerita berkaitan dengan proses pengkaryaan seni. Saya rasa sepanjang hari ini, daripada pagi ke petang tadi, kebanyakan yang kita bercerita adalah dalam konteks hasil karya, tapi tidak ada satu pun yang menyentuh berkaitan dengan proses ataupun dalam konteks yang lebih jauh dalam pendidikan. Dan saya sebagai seorang pensyarah dan juga seorang researcher, most of the time, if we looking back on all lecturers, they are not just about teaching. It's not just about art making, but at the same time to do a research. Okay, so isu-isu ini selalunya menjadi satu perkara yang kurang sebenarnya diambil perhatian dalam konteks artis, kerana artis pada kita pada hari ini bukan di Meja saja, saya rasa di the whole world. Mereka hanya fikirkan untuk menghasilkan karya, tapi tidak mengenangkan bagaimana proses ataupun penghasilan karya itu dihasilkan. Dan bagaimana proses ataupun penyelidikan itu dapat menyumbang kepada nilai intelektual ataupun akademik atau meningkatkan taraf kedudukan kita sebagai seorang artis di mata masyarakat. Sorry to say, but most of our students, fine art students or other art students, they always be labelled as a third class student. Sorry to say, but that's the truth. Okay, why? Because the community always look at us as just a community who produce artwork without a research, without a process, without anything else. So how actually we can encourage, we can improve our status? That's the one is the main question here. Okay, kalau kita lihat balik, satu kaedah yang saya rasa paling sesuai adalah melalui menggalakkan penyelidikan dan mendedahkan penyelidikan itu ke mata masyarakat. Dan satu caranya melalui publication. Okey, sebagaimana yang Pak Utama tadi cakap, perlu banyak penulisan, perlu apa tu, tapi still juga masalah yang sama. Sekiranya pelajar ataupun itu tidak terdedah dalam konteks pendidikan, dia tak tahu apa nak ditulis. So, by book or by book, isu pendidikan, isu proses, isu apa tu patut ditekankan selain daripada penghasilan karya. Dan jadi saya rasa dalam konteks pameran selepas ini juga, tidak hanya tertumpu kepada bagaimana hasil karya ahli, tapi bagaimana ia didokumentasikan, bagaimana proses pendidikan itu berlangsung, dan juga bantuan-bantuan dari segi dana pendidikan whatsoever, perlulah ada sokongan juga daripada rakyat untuk membantu dalam proses untuk mengembangkan proses pendidikan. Itu saja dari saya. Terima kasih.
Okay, briefly recap, basically you're talking about issue of knowledge production and lack of intellectual and scholarly discourse about the work or via the work, okay? Yeah. Right, thank you. Hang on,
we have a technical.
Okay. Well, we have our technical issue. I hope everyone has a feedback form.
Yeah, I'm going to put that
in the before you go, yeah.
Nation can suspend.
Wait. Okay.
Alright, do we have anyone who would like to follow up, especially those with the institution or the education institution with interest in research and in terms of media technology? For example, I can also look at Dr. Lim Kok Yeong from Faculty of Creative Multimedia, Dr. Shamiza, or the doctors, please, in the house. First, as we address the issue of knowledge production.
Assalamualaikum and very good afternoon to all. I'm Shamiza. I'm from Melaka. Yeah? I've been teaching fine arts for the past 20 years, and the scenario nowadays about this practice, practice based, has been a point of discussion, and I can say that we hardly get full support from the university system, following that we are just practice and hands-on, or we can say vocational kind of products. We are competing with other social sciences where their KPIs is actually how many publications they have produced, how many citations they have, how many high index. All these social sciences measurement done in the higher institution has actually put us into the second grade of lecturer. I can say that. So practice has been undermined a bit by the social sciences due to the other area of social sciences has contributed to the KPI that been measured by a certain body, like how many index corpus, how many IEEE journal are you in. So that is a problem that we institution lecturer that teach practice-based studio practice, in the higher institution are facing now. They didn't value or they didn't take practice as part of the important achievement of the universities, because they fall into research that is abide to all these KPIs. Okay, number two, I am a practitioner myself, and I migrated to Melaka last year, and I've been trying hard to see what are the possibilities that I can try out to practice like what I have in KL before, and it is none. So I have to initiate like what Pangrok Sulap, what Bengkel Bonyo have done before. They are my samples. I have to initiate it myself. And in order to do that,
I have to create my own network with the other practitioners outside. For example, I just came back from Australia for Sydney Sculpture Conference that has no connection with all the social sciences community that judge you through how many KPIs and all that. They are focusing on the practice the sculpture produce and how the sculpture can reach to the public art, to the public society nowadays. Yeah. So that are the things that I feel I would like to see and I would like to initiate later on. Yeah. It might take time for me to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Very quickly, I think some of the terms that Dr. Chamisa have used that are actually the politics within the academic world, as in like the differences between the social sciences, humanities, and the arts in judging and evaluating the so-called contribution of this form of knowledge. So you can skip the IEEE and Scopus thing, but I think essentially it also reflects how within the society is that the value of this artistic knowledge per se in tandem to other kind of sciences and technical knowledges, and this is some of the issue that I think maybe the artistic community might not realize, but it's also reflected in the academic world within our university system. So that's very important point. I think what this thing we can take away from Shamisa is also she's taking the initiative to do the kind of horizontal network because she's away from, she's in a different center right now. So could I ask, okay, Dr. Lim from Multimedia University.
Hi, I'm Kok Yong. I'm a media artist by practice, and also I'm teaching in the same university where Zalbin is teaching. I was actually waiting to respond to question number 4, but since you mentioned my name. Okay, I'm sure you've seen in the report, whether it's social media, official journals, and so on. It actually lists out the top 10 most useless degree, and fine arts is actually listed in the top 10. Yeah, but I mean, with due respect to art practice and whatnot, art is still very dear to me. But I think as practitioner, we have to, we have to be aware of this challenge or threat, whatever you call it, because the process of making has changed. Yeah, I mean, as someone working in the IPTS, the main source of income coming from the fees of the students, and we somehow have to ensure the students graduate from the institutions, they have to be guaranteed employability. Yeah, it's almost become a mandate for IPTS to not offer fine art degree because it's not profiting. Yeah, students cannot find the jobs. That's why we are discussing. That's why we are here to discuss. How can we survive? All right, as someone working with fine art. So I think it goes to the main problem itself, which is I think the conception of art itself has to be expanded. All right, the process, we have to acknowledge there are other processes of making, there are other mediums, and we also have to acknowledge that the process, the learning, people can pick up easily today, from YouTube. There are a lot of things that you can do it yourself, all right? So there are other agendas, there are other media, there are other platforms, and there are other resources, I think. And we are coming to Industry Revolutions 4.0, right? Even the manual process of making is being taken over by artificial intelligence, machine, and so on. And how we as artists respond to this, all right? Besides thinking about making a living with our art products and so on. So that's the issues that I'm more interested in. Yeah. And if we can't find resources from Ministry of Arts, perhaps we should actually expand and look into other resources and platforms. Perhaps the artists, the scientists are very eager and very keen to work with the artists as well, and that's why I, as a strong advocate for cross-disciplinary practice, we should in fact expand into and look into other disciplines and other models as well.
Okay, just as a moderator, because I want to pick up very quickly, can you speak specifically more about a kind of possibility of platform as artist, a researcher, crossing with technology or media, could you just give a very simple example so that people could think about that? Because essentially what we are, we hope this session will not be, it's like, how do we distribute resources? But I'm looking for idea of being resourceful, okay, resourcefulness, and what kind of ideas can think. So if you can draw it from your background, right, can just tell us very quickly what kind of possibility, what kind of imagination, what kind of things that you have seen as a researcher or artist going to residency abroad that is interesting for us to think about. Hopefully that people, we can all pick up ideas from different, although you might not agree, but maybe you find potential collaborators in the future. So you have 1 minute.
I've been consciously staying away from art community for a while because I don't know where I belong, but so I tried to tap into the science world, the scientific world, and I find that working, the scientists, the technologists, they're very eager to work with the artists. In fact, they have the know-how, right? But they don't know how to make it more interesting, intellectual, or more beautiful aesthetics, whatever you call it, right? So as long as you're willing to expand your zone, all right, and start working with other people from other disciplines, there are plenty of opportunities and resources as well. And we can, in fact, tap into our resources. Say if you don't have a space to work, perhaps you can consider working. They are willing to offer you a lab, right? They're willing to offer you their scientific labs and their tools and equipment for you to explore and experiment. So that's what we should, I mean, as far as the process is concerned, there are other processes and tools and ways of making arts as well.
Thank you, Dr. Lim. Any response from? Sabat.
Thank you. My name is Abbas. I just want to follow up from what Shamila says. I think it's ironical that in the history of art education at tertiary level in Malaysia, at least peninsular Malaysia, that the majors, the specialization in art came from ITM, which is Institute of Technology, and secondly from University of Science Malaysia, which both are not humanities based. But I just want to highlight the irony. But on the other level, I want to put forth this question. How do we encourage a more verbal kind of student to be interested in the practice of art and stop complaining about how the third graders end up being artist majors? My suggestion is that we have to make sure, for instance, I tried this and it failed anyway for years, that you have to ask the art major to minor in a verbal subject. That's one. You major in art, studio art, but minor in literature or whatever, And I've had students who did that in majoring in fine arts in USM, who end up with a first class honors in USM and went up to Cambridge. And that is possible, but she left anyway. She's not interested in this kind of discrimination. And the other thing is to encourage non-practitioners of art, non-practicing artists to major in areas concerning with art, and perhaps we can think about introducing a major in art history at the undergraduate level, art writing, art management, definitely, aesthetics or philosophy, which we had in USM before, and this would bring in interest from people who are interested in the arts, thinking about art and talking about art, arguing about art, but not very good in making art. Those are two possibilities to me. Now, two other things, just to quickly say. Two things that could be questioned, could be discussed. One is, I think, in order to go forward at this present age, we need to ask students to question the canonization of modern contemporary Malaysian art. we should not always follow what our teachers do. We should always check and debate about the main canons of art. Why should it be European, for instance? One more last one. And we should also bring into consideration the intranational discussion of arts and culture, not just regional or international, but intranational. From Sabah, Sarawak, every country, every state, I mean every segment of society. Just to bring a topic. Thank you.
Ada siapa lagi nak respon? Okey, silakan. Carmen and
Okay, hi everyone, my name is Carmen. I'm a lecturer at University of Bersempena. I'm not an artist, however I've been writing about the arts for about 20 years now, I think. So I'm very interested in the arts, primarily visual arts, but also other areas. I do want to say that I'm not teaching any art or fine art in my school, but I'm teaching a component of art in a bigger class called Malaysian culture. And one thing I find very interesting is when we talk about art, we tend to always think of art as a skill, as something we do with our hands, which means everything else that everybody else does in science is using their brain, but artists don't use their brain because they use their hand, they use some skill. So it's very common for students to say, I'm not good at art, I'm not interested in art because I can't draw, I can't do artistic things. But I think that's fundamentally a problem that has not been addressed in most educational environments. So if you're bad at art in schools because you can't draw a very nice landscape painting or some other painting and you fail at drawing. But essentially art for me, as I teach it in my class, is not about the skill at all. Actually, there's a difference between art and artisans. So artisans learn a skill. Artists can be artisans, but not all artisans are artists. So to me, fundamentally, to the thinking of an artist is a person who's able to think and challenge the boundaries of what it means to think, whether aesthetically or in any other area. So I think it requires a reform in how we think about art as a whole, not just in terms of do students get jobs. And students want jobs because they think, I've entered this field and I want to get a job that's related to something I can do with my hands. But in fact, there's more you can do with the art degree that's not just about making things or drawing things. And I think that's the fundamental flaw in how we think about our education system. Now, one thing I just want to offer as an idea is, what I do in my class is I teach Malaysian history using art. So I use paintings and artwork from Malaysia to talk about moments in Malaysian history. So the whole of Malaysian history gets seen through artwork, which means students get to look at history through art and talk about the art first, then only they talk about the history. Because what are artists if not documenters of history? And these are things that I think maybe should be brought in as early as primary school or even before. So, I mean, one thing I just want to say very quickly is Ilham, they have the children's art tour which I've attended before. And it's, for example, for me, one of the best tours that a child can ever go through, and it's like way better than primary school or whatever I learned in school in art class. So these are the things that I think need to be done, and unfortunately, like it or not, Ministry of Education has to be involved because it's an educational thing. We got to start them young. If it's too late when we bring everybody here and everybody's like 20s, 30s, it's kind of a bit too late, I think. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for your inputs. Ada lagi? Saya berminat untuk menekankan tentang transfer of knowledge tadi, within and between disciplines. Maknanya kita berorientasi disiplin tau ni. Kita bukan antara kongkongan seniman sahaja, tetapi kita boleh engage dengan lain-lain bidang. Mungkin itu salah satu benda yang mungkin CENDANA boleh tap into lah later. Kan Puan Izan? Mungkin sebab dulu saya remember dalam sekitar mid-2000 National Space Agency pernah mengadakan residency untuk artis, and Kamal Sabran was the first and last artist. Lepas tu dia tak ada. I don't know why. Mungkin dia tak tahan kerja dengan artis ke apa kan, but it was a very very good platform lah for artists. So during that particular residency, Kamal Sabran dia dapat extract sound daripada Jupiter, the waves, and now look at him. Dia gunakan sampel-sampel tu untuk dia develop dia punya career. So I think it is there is potential lah untuk benda-benda macam ni. Untuk kita try to mencari satu mencari satu mangsa baru ke kan, itu dengan National Space Agency, dengan Dato' Mazlan dulu. So lepas ni mungkin dengan bahagian lain, dengan kementerian mana-mana, environment, ya itu sekarang I think satu benda yang paling penting saya rasa, environmental art. Mungkin kita boleh kerjasama dengan kementerian alam sekitar, okay? Of course they have budget for that, dan gunakan capacity yang ada pada artis. Okay, ada sesiapa yang berminat lagi untuk?
Okay, besides Sonia and Yaakob, anyone else? Serena, okay, same people. I want just hold on. Anything else? Okay, then Sonia, please.
Yeah, sorry.
Please.
Since we're talking about this disconnect between art and science, I just want to make a little comment. I think one of the main problems start from secondary school. After Form 3, you are separated into art and science stream. For example, I was in the best science class, but I was always being art inclined. So from that moment, I've already had a kind of identity crisis, and I think I'm not the only one. So maybe if something can be done about this, I don't know. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. When talk about antara bidang, okay. Saya bagi contoh research yang saya dah berjaya lakukan. Saya buat satu research saya adalah dalam antropologi. Saya gabungkan visual dan juga anthropology study of megalith in dari, Sarawak. And what we did actually from the outcome, we come up with the artworks, and also we present our artwork using digital, and come out with digital exhibition in one of the museum in Sarawak, and we won gold, one in Malaysia, another one is in Korea. So I think it's a big possibility actually for basically, especially in collaborating knowledge in visual arts and also in science, or even though in science, social science, whatsoever. The only problem that we face right now actually is the fundings, because in research, when we talk about art, there's a very limited resources, okay, especially in, like my grants is from KPT. From KPT, they always looking for science stream.
What is KPT?
Kementerian Pendidikan Tinggi. Okay. Okay, and then that's the only sources that we can get funding. Okay, and then from others government body, maybe from Ministry of Tourism or whatever lah. Itu yang kita boleh tackle. Jadi saya rasa mungkin satu part yang dengan CENDANA boleh dicadangkan ialah melihat bagaimana potensi gerak-gerak pendidikan ini boleh dikembangkan lebih jauh, tidak hanya terhad pada penghasilan karya-karya seni semata-mata, tapi juga menyumbang kepada bagaimana ia boleh digabungkan ataupun diterjemahkan dalam penghasilan karya yang menyokong ilmu ataupun knowledge dari lain-lain bidang. Okay, terima kasih.
Okay, after that is Mr. Cairo, do you have something specific?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then we list out, okay? Right.
Okay, ni dilema. This is our dilemma in the university, the university studies, because all the KPIs, insights, focus, whatnot. But yes, in terms of translating knowledge, for example, picking up from Zaba's comment, because now even USM has sort of like streamlined towards, the model is like your ITM model, but then is that the major minor is still masih lagi tekan. So of course there are people from biology and all that can take a minor in fine arts, and now like this semester I managed to package the minor of art history, because we have like several art history classes that we managed to package as a minor course lah. Myself hoping that I've got like students from physics, maths, they're good, or from humanities and all that, coming to take minor in my class, because basically artists couldn't write. Tak boleh nulis dalam kelas I kan. So in hope that
there are other students from different background yang berminat, they do not produce artwork, but they are interested in the arts, and it might sort of like tease up their interest into arts. Okay, second thing is that I think what we need is a professional association. Okay, like MRM has a professional association. Kalau kita ada professional association, contohnya United States, the College Arts Association, so we can link this all, those who are, the association membership, the university, also professional membership, that can also like biannual conferences, that we can talk more specifically about art making within the realm of research and all that. And also we can fight for changes to happen in the curriculum. For example, you need to tap with the professional association, then we can always demand that professional association demand us to do this or change this within the curriculum. Jadi then only you can fight for it lah. Punya masalahnya tak ada professional association, and of course for the KPI not, it demands us to be in a professional body, tapi which we do not have in terms of fine arts that ada.
Dr. Serena, can you be more specific? Professional association for art educators, academics, or artists, or curators, or writer? Which specific?
Okay, if you are looking at the model of College Arts Association, right? So it can be like art academics, can be artists, but of course they have to pay fees and all that. Like can be annual membership, or it can be lifetime membership. Okay, but it can also be designers and historian designers to be also a part of that. So, so that it works like within colleges, universities, and all that. And of course, those artists who are professionally wants to be associated with a professional association, that they want to have some sort of like acronyms at the end of their name,
So it's a form of social organizations, like being organized.
But then we are the one who's like the community yang kiranya it is tidak bergantung kepada any institution. So we are the one who's actually controlling it. Okay.
Okay, understand. Yeah. So just to make it clear, so that everyone knows what kind of could be quite similar to the artist union in a sense. Okay, next. Yeah, Lisa.
Hello, my name is Lisa, and I'm from the Zhongshan building. The Zhongshan building is a new arts hub in Kampung Atas that started only last year. And some of the keywords that Salvin or Sharon or Simon mentioned about cross-disciplines, bottoms-up approach, and resourceful are the things that we hope to do in Zhongshan. So we have very little funding when we started. And initially it was because Snow and myself, we wanted to have an art gallery. But we are not in Bangsa, so we needed to have, good neighbors. And we didn't have a lot of money to actually rebuild, to have this hit place. We just did what we could with what we had. So we restored the building, we invited our friends who needed a space. One of them is the Malaysian Design Archives, the library, the Tandan record stores. So those are the ones who first say yes, because they also needed a space. These are people who are within our network, who does different things. We are doing visual arts. But then, do we have to think so far to do science? We actually haven't even mentioned fashion, interior design, graphic design, and all these other art disciplines that is next to us. And the other thing, when we were kind of selecting tenants, we realized that we are so small that we needed collaborations instead of competition. We were not a marketplace for you to come and have 10 galleries, but instead we wanted to have somewhere where we can learn from each other, other disciplines. And so far, in terms of being resourceful, and we have funding, we are trying to be sustainable. We did get a fund from Pink City, from the restoration of the building, but nothing to do with the content of the building. So, I think if artists are creative, I'm sure they can find ways to do things. And if it's a bottom-up approach, come on, artists are the biggest stakeholders in this art scene, so I think they can think of something. Thank you.
Hi, Smita here. I wanted to respond to Serena's comment about associations. As an arts management educator in LaSalle, I am part of a network of Asia Pacific, it's called ANSA, it's the Asia Pacific Network for Cultural Education Researchers. And that's an informal network that we're still trying to develop. But also as part of the institution, we are also members of the European Network, NCAC, it's a funny acronym, and that's cultural policy as well as arts education, arts management education. And the American network is the AAAE, which is American Arts Educators. So these are all networks of arts educators within the arts management field. I think it would be an excellent idea, considering that so many artists are educators as well, many of them are here in this room, and we have institutions all over the country. If we did try to organize a Malaysian network, it doesn't have to be immediately formalized straight away, and it can cross the various arts disciplines, because the networks that I'm describing are arts management. But certainly within art history, which I think we do have an Asian network informally already, art history, arts making, if you want, extended to the creative fields as well, and there are a few arts management programs in only a couple of universities, I believe. All of these could form an association. And that's an easier step, I think, to unionizing. Even though I fully support the idea of unions, we all know the reality in Malaysia does not support the idea of unions. But maybe a professional association of arts-related educationists could be a reality.
Just very fast, Srinath, can you briefly say what is the purpose of such association other than lobbying for policy changes or even for... No, okay, can you just give an example? Yeah. Half a minute.
Okay. In America, definitely not about lobbying, because that's not what you're supposed to be doing. Europe is very much related to cultural policy, though. So they work very closely at a policy level because there are so many policy scholars as a part of it. Both are considered a little bureaucratic. So ultimately, it's a good jamboree, right? Every year you get together. At the very least, you meet once a year. There are membership dues. The Asia Pacific Network is looser because we're still trying to figure out. The idea is to operate more like a collective, but it's hard because collectives need to meet, and physically you don't. So we're still trying to figure out the mechanics of ANSA, but the objective is mainly knowledge distribution and sharing for the region.
So it's important to know that what are this kind of association and how or what role do they play in tandem with their community. So is your question related?
In addition to sort of knowledge, distribution and sharing, I think there are also sort of like two possibilities that organizations like this sort of take, and one is the one that I'm less in favor of, which is the one taken by the Architect Institute, where you sort of start tacking on titles and then it becomes a professional body that regulates the knowledge and the industry. It becomes like it becomes a sort of like membership of gatekeepers that will just sort of like tell you, this is art, this is not art, this is art history, this is not art history. That I'm not in favor of. But what I'm in favor of is this idea that actually, for example, the College Art Association of America that Serena brought up is also a very strong platform. At least it has sort of like grown increasingly to become a very strong platform for advocacy of various sort of like activist sort of social issues. Ranging from sort of like workers' rights, refugee sort of like issues, to LGBT sort of rights. I think that's sort of like very important to sort of think of the possibility of, even with a sort of like really, I guess it's a very sort of like conservative name, like professional association, right? Is that a number of these associations overseas are trying to so then sort of like reinvent themselves and make themselves more relevant and make themselves more inclusive. We can learn from them.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. So it's about advocacy and...
Can I just add one point though about the lobbying? Just to make it clear, because of the way lobbying is viewed by certain governments, such an association would not be officially registered as that being an objective. But certainly the mere fact that we get together and are exchanging knowledge means that you are better equipped if you want to speak to your government for the purpose of lobbying. But lobbying is not necessarily explicitly the agenda.
sorry, I lack of terms to use because I wasn't in Malaysia during May 9, so okay, joke aside, so that we want to tease out so that everyone is very clear, but when these examples are being brought out with this kind of platform, what kind of possibility, what kind of role it can serve, and this kind of model from different places, how does it work? Yeah. Okay, there was a question.
Just one shot.
Yeah, one shot.
I think one thing that you should be focusing on, talking about what was yang apa ni, cerita cakap tadi, is about artis sekarang tak ada some sort of union untuk focus on the intellectual property issue, copyright. Like musicians, entertainment, musicians, songwriters, they have MCPA semua kan. But kita selalu take advantage of tau, artis-artis jangan tak tahu what happens to your work when it gets in the possession of a particular individual misalnya kan. Apa dia punya hak untuk jual for the secondary market, and then when they come up with merchandises maybe kan. So artists must I think start lah. I think this is with the new climate and so on. I think we should be more serious about that, so that dah slowly dah jadi culture. Macam kayak overseas, they are very particular about this. Whenever there's a transfer into a secondary market, like 10% or 50% goes back to the artist. Or kan? So sekarang kita fikir macam tu. Kalau tidak artis rugi lah.
There's actually today there is a talk about artist rights somewhere else. So,
okay, I think if you notice, we are actually gradually moving into the next few questions, and some of the questions are related. And I think I like the point that when Yanko from Unimas mentioned that doing all the research and how it was shown in a digital form, and in terms of like communicating, voicing out, this association are all. I'm referring to question number 3 here, is that actually they are being answered partially. So if you feel that your comment is actually addressing not just question 1, but 2 or 3 or 4, or even 5 or 6, please just say, okay, I'm addressing this question because I think it's very, very relevant to me right now, and I have something to say about that. Okay, so that we are clear that. But I think in terms of structurally, we can move on to 2 and 3 again. Other than making the transmission of knowledge, you can have the interdisciplinary knowledge and things like that. What other different ways are other ways for presenting art and engaging audiences beyond the gallery and museum and Instagrams? If you have very briefly.
Nadira? Yeah, then Lavas.
Yeah, sorry, Nadir here again. Yeah, so this one, I want to kind of collate, like, just combine responding to question 1 and 2 at the same time. So I do want to highlight a couple of things, which is that, sorry, I'm going back to Warner Bengkel and Rasulullah again. But you're talking about like platforms and spaces. The thing that's really interesting about part of that process is, at least for Rasulullah, whenever they want to make a big artwork, they will actually go into the kampung and do workshops in not 1 but 2 series with the community. So so sometimes that access is developed working together with NGOs and social enterprises. And because the kampung is already like an ecosystem where we can kind of go in and learn and exchange knowledge, it's somewhere that like a lot of artists, at least the ones from Borneo, I'm not sure about the kampungs here, have found a mobile platform. So wherever they go, whichever kampung they go to can become that platform in itself. And so going back to Borneo Bengkel this year, their residency was extended from 7 days to 11 days this time around. And that's because the first weekend that they started off, they did I was not part of it, but there was an artist residency where the multidisciplinary artists were brought into Kampung Sadir to do an exchange with the Orang Kampung and then to learn about weaving and that kind of thing. And also what came out of that, like later and towards the end of the week also, there was another art exhibition which was staged in Kuching itself, in the house building. So the house building actually is not a gallery, but they turned the space into a gallery. So you sort of see how like the kampung can be an ideal place for sharing knowledge, but also can be, you know, connected back into urban spaces.
So basically there's kind of transitional role that even the kampung actually become the platform of making, and then a house itself, which is basically a social lifestyle. House. Yes. What is it? How will you term it very quickly?
House.
10 seconds.
It's a movement.
It's a movement.
It stands
Okay.
for Harmonize, Accelerate, Unite.
Okay. So it's not a physical space.
We embody. We take up physical space, but it's the people.
Okay.
But when they do, because it's when they do their residencies and they go to different, when they went to Kampung Sadir, then that became another platform to kind of have that exchange. But also, no, sorry.
Yeah, again, I think this is a very interesting model that anyone from different places, you want to look, okay, what is that model and how does it work? That's interesting. How do you guys operate? Yeah. Okay, can I? Yeah.
Sorry, because in Sabah you can at least almost guarantee that every Dusun Kampung has a bamboo orchestra or has handicraft makers.
So how to utilize and activate that local knowledge in order to go along with your artistic production and research is actually a know-how that's very important. Okay, Zabas?
I just want to suggest that artists perhaps can check out other departments apart from Balai Seni, apart from other galleries. Check out, submit proposals to, for instance, the National Museum. I think they need to be reactivated, and that's a wonderful place to. You just go visit the National Museum and check out the potential of inspiration from there. And apart from National Museum, the National Library, the National Archive, they can make exhibition for you. And best of all, submit a proposal to Ministry of Defence. They have the War Museum, which is wonderful. I don't know about here, but Penang is a wonderful museum. And I have friends in Australia who in art and become curators in War Museum. It's a wonderful thing. So don't just think about art in terms of just Balai Seni, Lukis Negara, You can submit to both. Ask them to work together, Balai Seni and Ministry of Defence, for instance. Something might turn out. Okay, thank you.
Wonderful idea, Zabas. I think this is the kind of spirit that I think we are looking for, because it answers actually for question 1, 2, 3, 4 actually. Because by making your work or residency in a museum or in the defense ministry, right, you actually show in a different place, and then you are engaging and voicing out in a different way. And we want to advocate artists to be able to take that kind of initiative to be able to go beyond the kind of conventional normalized studio making process, go along beside that, but also work to the Ministry of Finance or banking and things like that, because these are actually models that's actually taking place in many other countries. They are doing that in the reverse. For example, CERN in Europe invite artists to work with their particle shooting, particle colliders, for example. So that kind of imagination is what I hope that we can be able to push our artists to think about as well. And also those who have the ears of policymakers, ask them to think about how do we encourage policy or programs that cross our trans or interdisciplinary exchange and programs. I see a raise. Shami?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Shamin. Basically a curator, project manager. I'm actually very interested in the idea of audiences. I do think we all, as in we in the visual arts, sit in a room quite a bit and talk to ourselves, right? But I think more and more we need to try and figure out how to grow audiences, because I think with audiences, and we can't say we get numbers. Numbers help a lot of our funders to go and seek more money, right? And I do say that it's on a lot of us to take that accountability to grow our audiences. And I think now is a very exciting time, especially when it comes to platforms, and this word that I do strongly believe we need more of, which is collaborations. Whether it's within the visual arts or externally outside the visual arts. A lot of the ideas, I talk to a lot of artists, and a lot of them have ideas, and then they sort of say, but how do we do this? Because if the idea is not selling, or it's going to be harder to sell, how are we going to do something? So I think within even the visual art industry, how do we collaborate with each other? Whether it's venues, whether it's people who can, for example, project manage, whether it's people who can sell, like the galleries to help sell. Because a lot of these art projects, at the end of the day, you can sell the work. if you manage to get it up. But I think one of the hardest things is actually to do it, to get it up. And then taking it out of a art gallery or a white cube space takes a lot more work, right? It's not going to be as straightforward, let's just go and hang on. A lot more resources are needed, even technical resources, how do we put things up? And a lot of this can happen if we collaborate or even talk to each other. And I do encourage a lot of the artists to talk to artists on how they did something, on how something happened, and from there share that. And that's within the visual arts. Externally, there are a lot of platforms which we can also tap into. For example, bringing visual arts into, and I loosely use the term, other festivals, other platforms in which we share audiences, whether it's architectural and visual arts, photography and visual arts, NGOs and visual arts. Immediately we're crossing audiences to give us a wider platform to work with, more people to work with, so that we don't end up running after the same audiences, where one weekend we have 10 events and all of us have to make a decision on where to go. So I think the two key things here are basically accountability to do it, as well as collaborations, whether it's within the arts or outside the arts.
Yeah, very good point, Sherlyn, because it raised the point that the audience for the arts actually is not one-dimensional. It's not just an aesthetic pursuit or collecting of artwork, but you are actually engaging different forms of urban and modern phenomena, okay, people who are informed by different kind of knowledge and practices. So could I just have a Cairo before then? What? Yep. Who has the mic? Who can speak? You have the call.
Fuad, okay, saya Fuad lagi. Just to follow up a bit from the Shamil, the possibility of to try to position, now that we have CENDANA, but itu dengan masalah-masalah yang biasa kita dengar tadi itu. Pasal kita tahu art sekarang ni kita dekat sini memang very market driven. So kebanyakan production memang based on saleable or commercial standard. But then ada artis-artis yang cuba nak explore karya-karya yang eksperimental, yang di luar boundary ini, dia orang akan hadapi masalah bila berdepan dengan funding lagi. Dan saya cuba, sebab saya dengar tadi, saya teringat satu art producer based in London, Art Angel, how they operate, Tapi mungkin CENDANA, I don't know how to position this, because they have this economic term in the CENDANA. So one of the things that they did is they even intentionally asked for the proposal yang quite impossible, yang unrealized proposal. They ask for that kind of proposal. So that means it's not commercial. So artis yang ada idea yang very ambitious, tapi susah dengan banyak sebab Art Angel akan produce this kind of project. So maybe CENDANA can tap into this also. I don't know. Thank you.
That's one kind of possibility, but I think it needs the logic within the, I won't say market, within the social economic condition to allow that to take place, unless this society is able to answer all the diverse needs of its creative output. But I think those are very ideal, and because I think London, I suppose, or Europe, it operate in a different capacity, they're able to absorb and also able to pick up that kind of challenge. But I think these are the ideas I think we hope that everyone could bring out. Oh, it would be interesting if we have this, we have Zhongshan or a different kind of way of thinking, so that we can think ahead. Okay, this is what we hope that we are thinking ahead as to what are the other possibilities. All right, failed project that cannot be realized, project is too big, and if you're aware that there are actually artist residency in Antarctica. Is it Arctic or Antarctica? Right, those things are actually happening very fast paced that that we might not even realize, or we might actually. I'm running out. Harold, back to you.
This time I'm wearing a hat as a writer. I'm a writer of science fiction. I have 5 books with Fixie. Okay, so we have this kind of union called My Writers, Among Writers. Okay, we nobody collects royalty for us. We actually have to shout and actually make noise on Facebook and telling this publisher is not paying, that publisher is not paying, stay away from them. So it's a loose collective. It's based on Facebook first for 3 years, and then we actually, today is their AGM, their second AGM, and actually I choose to come here. Okay, and it's actually just a Facebook page where writers come, Malaysian writer, who even based outside of Malaysia can actually join, but they have to be writers. They cannot be something else. They cannot be educator, they cannot be, because this is about unionizing. So that can be a start for you guys. And about, and writer also has the same deal. We don't have anybody to collect for us. I haven't been paid for 7 of my books. I only been paid by Fixie, because Fixie has a good, strong sale. But my other events, the name is so familiar, if I say the name everybody will know. He's a financial writer, he never paid for a non-fiction. I have non-fiction book, I have 9 books actually. Okay, so yeah, this is for you guys to think lah. Art collective, to become one, start with Facebook or something else.
Okay, thank you very much, Errol. Ada satu lagi yang nak respond to any of the questions lah? We don't have to go like okay, maybe perhaps I'd like to stress on the number 4 in the question, social and cross-disciplinary engagement. In what ways can art be brought closer to society or enrich other fields or professions through cross-pollination? Anyone wants to respond to that? Yes.
Hello, saya pun saya nak respon sikit tentang soalan nombor 4 tentang bagaimana penglibatan sosial, dan saya lebih nak memberi pandangan tentang bagaimana artis dan terlibat dalam social causes, social cause. Contohnya macam untuk perkara-perkara yang berada contohnya di bandar, dan untuk terlibat, saya rasa untuk terlibat dalam sesuatu macam dengan sains atau apa yang saya lebih terfikir yang lebih relevan dan efektif adalah dengan contohnya tentang recycle ataupun dengan dengan menanam sendiri ataupun the idea of seed bank. Saya merasakan macam artis perlu terlibat dalam membawa awareness dan mendidik lebih kepada social concepts yang bentuk begini. Dan memang di Kuala Lumpur contohnya, kalau orang artis komplain tentang memang bawah 3,000 kalau kat bandar memang kira miskin bandar. So option dia selain daripada kita dapat grant atau apa, dan duit tu sebenarnya adalah untuk makan, dan macam mana untuk ada aktiviti lain, option lain untuk menanam sendiri. So macam mana artis boleh terlibat dalam bentuk-bentuk yang macam ni?
Okay, kita pun ada beberapa artis contemporary juga yang sedang ke arah itu dulu dengan grup-grup Aisyah Baruti, Diri Farhana yang fokus tentang isu-isu environmental. Ya, Rahel, would you like to say something?
Just wondering whether maybe now we could discuss maybe a little bit about art education, particularly I think sort of incorporating art and culture in the school curriculum, which I think we desperately need. I mean, one of the programs, I think they've done it in Singapore, which is they kind of artists in schools, which I don't know whether that's a good or a bad thing, but maybe maybe that's something that CENDANA maybe could explore, maybe looking at different models, or maybe finding a way to discuss with the Ministry of Education. How do we bring schools into galleries? How do we bring art into schools? I mean, we have been actually trying to connect with the schools, national schools, and it is actually quite difficult, because you have to go through the Ministry of Education, and we are not a national art institution either. I mean, we have worked a little bit with Chief from Malaysia, but really there was a way that we could, because we can do the tours and the activities in the gallery, but it's just finding a way to get the schools to come over.
How what happens in your children's school? How is it different from, say, a children's school in other galleries that makes it a lot more engaging or exciting? I'm sorry. Or maybe Karma wants to answer that. I don't know, either for you or Karma, it's to sort of maybe give us a sense of what the children's school, this is a question for either you or Cameron, and I wonder if you can give us a sense of what does the children's tour at Ilham Gallery, children's art tour at Ilham Gallery entails. Because it's probably a lot more engaging by the sound of how you guys have sort of put it, and if you were to sort of talk about art education, what differentiates this from other kinds of art education that we have in here?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things we were thinking about when we were devising these tours, I mean, it started off actually as tour for tots, which was like 2 to 5 year olds, and then now we have it for older kids, but the idea behind it was a lot of the art activities for kids is very crafts based, or it's very simplistic, like what colors do you see here, and what do you see. But we really wanted the art tours to be about, not so much about just what you're seeing, but really to encourage sort of critical thinking, to thinking outside the box, all the things that art can teach you. The fact that there's no right or wrong answer. So these kids are coming and there's no, okay, well, what do you see? And they have that imagination that time to really explore and to come up with different ideas. So, and I think one of the worst things about a lot of kids' activities is that they dumb it down to kids. Where kids don't have that. I think like a lot of adults, you sort of come in and you already have this kind of preconceived idea, or you can look at a piece of art and be like, oh well, I could have done that. But kids don't have that. They're very open, so I think that's kind of the basis for the tour. And also to use it as a way to discuss larger things, like about discussing history or geography or what's happening in the country.